Are you in therapy?
I tried.
What happened?
The system happened of like going in, meeting with a psychologist. Did I say that right?
Yeah, a psychologist does it too.
All right, cool. Meeting with a psychologist, telling them, hey, I'd like a therapist. And they say, well, what's your preference? Well, I'd like a black woman as my therapist.
Okay.
And they're like, all right, we got you. But we think you should take this medication. I was like, guys, I'm not taking any medication. I don't want to take medication. I told them, I was like, hey, I want to be in the moment. I want to feel through what we're doing.
So did they suggest this medication without even doing like more than 3 sessions?
Yeah.
See, and that is where, and this is where I complain. And I'm like, I would never give out medications. I don't even want to prescribe.
This is the first 2 minutes into the conversation, right?
That is
so
horrible.
When I go into an office for therapy, I don't say, hey, man, I have this big platform. We do mental health pop-ups, all this other stuff. I'm like, nah, I'm just looking for help.
Yeah.
So then I come into these offices and I meet with these people.
Mm-hmm.
It was an office full of women on top of that. Now I think about it. There was not one man in the office.
Yeah, there's not a lot of men in our field.
And and like I'm telling them, hey, this is what I would like, this is what I'm looking forward to. And within the first 2 minutes, it's, well, you should take this medication, or here's a suggestion, or here's a suggestion. It's like, I don't want any medication. And it's like, well, what do you want? I want a therapist. Okay, well, in the meantime, as we get you to a therapist, you should maybe check out this medication. I'm like,
no.
What do you guys not understand about no? And me happen to be in my right mind, coming to you guys for help, and you're making these suggestions, and then I think of all the people who I say, go get therapy, go get help, go reach out to the system. And it's like, I know how to stand up for myself because I'm spiritually not broken. So I'm here. Right. But for someone who's not there, where a suggestion is susceptible and it's like, well, this person went to school, they got a degree, I should listen to this person, I should do what they say. What happens to those people who fall through the cracks, who don't have families, who don't have backing, who don't have loved ones who care about them? Like, what happens to the person that was supposed to be cared for?
Oh, well, that's called negligence, and then that's also called you definitely just start taking medication and have side effects that you never had to have. Like, you never had to have those situations happen. But yeah, that's negligence. And I'm sorry, and to everyone that's watching or will watch, I would say you should probably write to the board on that individual, because there's no way you can honestly prescribe a medication to me without having to do an assessment.
It gets worse. You want to hear the rest?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I'll probably smile when I said that. That's messed up.
Right. Well, let's go out and take a cake.
So they had me meet with this lady after I said, hey, I'm here for a therapist. Same day. I go, I talk with this lady, her and I kiki. She's from Newark, New Jersey. I grew up in East Orange, New Jersey.
Okay, so y'all
over Maplewood. I'm like, nah, fuck with this. This is amazing. And then, like, I divulged the information as to why I'm here, and we went in to meet a therapist under the guise, because that's usually when you're fooled, that this is the person I'm either going to be working with because of how intimate the questions are. And I know I'm really good at, like, humoring my way in and out
of things.
Like, I've been doing it for a long time now. Okay. And this lady, she's asking questions, and I'm like, have you gone through some shit? And she's like, well, I lost my son. I'm like, okay, bet. But I'm really connected with her. We're having like the sis moment. Like, no, I see you. So I leave and I come back a month later. Before leaving, I let them know that they asked me how many times would you want therapy. I was like, with the way my schedule's set up, I would want it every other week or every week if possible. Come back a month later, I'm like, hey, I never got any calls, no follow-up from you guys. What's going on? They're like, maybe with the psychologist again. She's like, well, see your pressure's a little bit high, but let's make these suggestions. I'm like, look, when we met last time, I told you I don't want any medication. Right. I appreciate the heads up though. Right. She was like, well, for this other thing, medication. I was like, you're not listening to me. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be funny to you anymore. And she's like, what? She was like, I was like, I think I'm going to leave. She's like, well, I was like, you're not listening. Obviously, the jokes aren't going to work with you guys. And yeah, I feel a temper coming, so I'm going to just go now. We leave. She's like, wait, let's get Mr. Jones a therapist. And it's like, did I have to raise hell for you guys to get me a therapist? Because, like, That's not it. It's number one. Number two, what happened to the last lady that I came here and I talked to? And when I said the name, she didn't recognize the name. Not saying the name on camera on purpose, of course.
Right.
So it turns out the lady I talked to that her and I kikied when I told her my story about what I was going through was not a therapist. She doesn't even work for the company. She worked for an outside company that they brought in for a community group that's supposed to help with people who are mourning over a loss of loved ones that they weren't clear about when they introduced me to the lady.
And again, negligence.
Yeah.
That definitely is
Yeah.
malpractice. I would have sued. Only because the reason why is because that person should identify who she was and why she was asking those questions. Like, that is by law. Did you sign a consent form? Oh, like, you would have had a whole suit. I'm just being honest with you. You would have had a whole malpractice suit because you have to sign a consent form. And this is like intake, day one. You have to sign a consent form. And that person who does the intake should actually be doing it over the course of at least 3 to, like, of the course that you're having these sessions. Shouldn't be like, you meet with this person and they're gonna, no, that shouldn't be it. Now, if you're calling in to just say, hey, I'm requesting to see a therapist, can you connect me to a therapist? That person can say, okay, what insurance are you using and what are you coming in for? And they can take that information and then they can send you to the right person. But to actually ask in-depth questions to get information for a 50-minute session, no, that should have been a therapist.
40-minute session, then a 50-minute session with a stranger who wasn't a therapist.
That's ridiculous. And they should have told you, like, hey, this individual is doing volunteer work or doing research. Would you like to would you want to be a participant?
Now, she admitted that she's a part of an outreach program, but they didn't say that the program doesn't work for this company. Because if you know that, you're going to say, why am I talking to you?
Exactly. Now? I came here for, like, a specific reason.
So,
and then not even that, like,
experience. And getting out of bed to go to therapy is easy.
It's not easy. It's not. Because you're telling somebody else that you don't know, a stranger, your business.
Yeah.
And she shouldn't even, I'm not trying to be mean, but she shouldn't have given you that information that her son passed away. Like, you don't do that right up front. You don't do that until the report is there and there is a possibility that you're not going to cause any harm by, like, disclosing personal information.
Does that count when the psychiatrist asks you whether you're suicidal or not?
Yes, it does.
Okay, because I told her that wasn't suicidal.
Yeah, like,
yeah.
It shouldn't matter.
So it doesn't matter. You still have to sign paper and everything else.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that for the people who don't know. Because, like, legal-wise, you would only hear this from, like, people within the business.
No, right. No, so at a therapy session, when you first have a session and you do an intake, you are supposed to, sign a consent form, sign, like, insurance papers. Like, there's about 3 documents that you need to sign. The therapist has to go over the consent form. The therapist even have to tell you that, hey, I'm a therapist. I can say I'm a licensed professional counselor. My background is, my theoretical orientation is psychodynamic. This session is going to be up to 45 to 50 minutes. I will stop us at 50 minutes, and everything here is confidential. And then you can go on and then you can stop. And then the first session is just intake, and then I'm gonna give you a document, maybe give you the biopsychosocial, that you go home and fill that document out, and then when you come back to our next session, we can discuss that.
I can make this story worse for you. You ready? All right. So the room that I was talking to the lady in, there was a nurse in the other room.
Oh no.
It gets better. The nurse that's in the other room that has a door in the wall, above the wall there's a slit. And I'm like, should I be talking to you when that nurse is in the room that has nothing to do with our session? And there's a slit where she can hear the convo. She's like, no, it's good. I was like, it's kind of weird that you guys have these rooms that are set up when I came to talk to a therapist, and I'm talking to you with someone I don't know in the other room.
Right. And at that point, they should have said, like, would you want the person to leave the room? And you could have stated yes or no. Yeah.
But that didn't happen, because in nightmares, that never happens.
I definitely understand. I think that maybe that was probably a community service organization. Not community service, like, what did they call it? Court service agencies.
Like Volunteer for America?
I don't want to say Volunteer for America, but I want to say, like, these community-based organizations don't really set up for confidentiality, and then again, this is where I come with federal laws. If federal government give us more money to trickle down to state, city, county, whatever, I think that agencies doing this work. So you have private practice, and a private practice person, they have to go on insurance panels and things like that, right? And in private practice, there's probably going to be like an office where you're going into this office with just you and the therapist. So that's kind of more higher scale, right? Then you have community-based core service agencies that are kind of lower scale, and these are the companies that are getting grant funding, government funding, and they're probably taking like Medicaid. Yeah. And I will be honest, the funding streams don't allow them to have a facility that has private spaces.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest issue, and that's why I say we need to change things on a federal level, because it's all about funding. If a hospital can be built and you have emergency rooms that actually have like rooms. I'm not sure if you've been in an emergency room before, right?
Yeah, I grew up in a hospital.
Okay, and so like they give you some type of privacy there, right?
Yeah.
Well, some core service agencies, they don't have that much privacy.
Yeah.
Because the building wasn't built that way because they didn't have funding. And so this is a funding thing, and then also that intake person, they're allowing like volunteers and community service individuals to do this work because they don't have funding.
Yeah.
They probably can't do it themselves.
Yeah.
And they probably was pushing medication because the reimbursement for the medication probably allows them to keep the lights on. Which is a federal issue, and that's why.
It's really messed up. It's really messed up.
Yeah.
Well, that got deep. I hope
I'm
you
sorry,
guys
guys.
enjoyed that information. Don't be sorry. This is information people need to know.
Yeah.